Good afternoon. I'm Tanya with Power Pantaloons, your holistic cancer wellness guide. And today we have Cambria Volonte from CV Wellness. Hi, Cambria. Welcome.
Hi, thanks so much for having me today, Tanya.
So, you want to tell everybody what you do, please?
Yeah, so I'm a whole being wellness practitioner, and I've spent the last 20 years filling my toolbox with all sorts of modalities that I can use to support, guide, and offer healing that the person themselves can utilize so they can heal themselves.
What kind of modalities?
Well, I use an integrated wellness approach. So I am a life coach as well as I'm a holographic healer and transport medium. And so a lot of my sessions, like my whole being wellness sessions, which I do by Zoom or on the telephone, they are more based on a coaching process. So they're based on a positive, proactive approach to dealing with something in an area in that person's life. And I focus on whole being wellness. So wherever a person is in that moment in their life, either in their mental being, their emotional being, their physical, or their spiritual being. We start wherever they need healing. And so the tools that we use is getting into the area of their emotional, mental, or physical, or spiritual being that's holding a blockage or holding a trauma or a belief, maybe an agreement or an attachment that no longer serves them, something that is really stopping them from being able to move forward in their lives. And we start in that area of their being by getting them to breathe into it. And so once we go into this breath, we're able to start to unlock some of the old stuck trauma that's been creating the reactions and the actions that that person may have been taking throughout their life. So with that, we start by clearing any type of blockage so that they can align to what it is that they truly want to experience by having tools that support them to heal themselves, as well as I tie in yoga, rehabilitative personal training to help their body get on track, pranayama, breath work. But a lot of my work is done by really inviting that person to take a step back, create some space and grace for themselves so that they can really truly see how their perceptions and their experiences in life are not necessarily who they are or what is happening. Because everything that we perceive and experience is based from something that we've experienced before. It's like there's a warning system. So we may have an interaction with someone and we react a certain way or we perceive that they're saying something. And so it's allowing that space around that and inviting that person to step back and see, oh, yeah, in my life, I've always seen it like this, and I've always reacted this way. And I can see that it's not serving me because it creates emotional reaction, which then my physical being and my spiritual being also live with me. And we help them shift that so that they can see if that perception is serving them. And if it's not, then we go through a beautiful series of releasing to get them to a place where they can step away from it. And the next time that it happens, because life is beautiful that way, they're able to say, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, I have a choice. It no longer triggers me. It no longer controls me. My physical being no longer has to feel it. And when they have that choice, that is true healing because they do literally change their lives.
Wow. So, I know that the mind and the body protect you when things happen, especially when you're young, and you can unlock that and help them do the work so that they're no longer traumatized by the trauma that happened to them, right?
Yeah, exactly that. So a lot of how I look at it is in line with like the four agreements, and that is like that as we go through life, we form attachments or agreements inside of our being. This is the way I am. This is something that I need. And as we make these different attachments and agreements in our being, we start to live and truly believe that they're part of our personality, they're part of who we are. And so an example of that would be, unworthiness. So say you've had a traumatic childhood where you haven't been given the love that you truly need in order to thrive and survive. And so a person can go through their entire life feeling like they're unworthy of receiving love. And so they constantly are pushing people away. They truly can't let anyone in, because if they let someone in, they actually would have to release that attachment or agreement that they were unworthy of love. So often we'll see that as, I just never can connect with anyone. No one ever sticks around. I'm always alone, right? Well, sometimes, yes, that's true. Sometimes, we have to go through these different aspects of our journey, and there is pain and we have to try to heal from that, or we have to see, the bigger picture around it. But often there's underlying trauma that's actually repelling the experience that you want because you're not aligning to it. So we have to heal that unworthiness and go way back to the beginning when it started. Or sometimes it's not even that far away. Sometimes it's like, a couple years ago. And so when I'm doing my whole being wellness sessions, I do what's called holographic healing. And so once we determine what area of the being that we're working on, go into the physical being by seeing where that's being held or harbored in their body. Sometimes this can come out as a physical ailment, that, a shoulder or a neck or hip that they haven't been able to shake, even though they've tried to get help left, right, and center. And so sometimes we'll go into that area of the body, or we'll work with the chakras, so the energy centers of the body. And the holographic healing allows me to have insight, which comes in the form of an image to me that I share with the person. And anything that I share is just put out as an offering. And so the offering is, this is what I offer. You can choose if that aligns with you by feeling that there's truth in it, or if it doesn't, see what there is that is the right thing for you, so that that person can draw out their own connection with it. And then we heal that area of their body by creating a new intention and releasing through energy, transport mediumship, whatever's been stuck in the tissue, in the being, in the mind.
So if you were just a random person and you didn't realize, like, everybody knows their stuff, but
Mhm.
how would you go ahead and, like, what kind of recommendations would you give for somebody to start thinking about and considering when they don't know what it is, or it was a piece of something that they've forgotten and they don't know how it's presenting? Do you know what I mean? Does my question make sense?
I think so.
Okay.
Um, so first off, I'll say my clients that I work with come with many different ailments, many different problems, traumas. They also come with many different religions and experiences and beliefs. And so, as a whole being wellness practitioner, my spiritual being that I focus on and the tools that I offer for that development has no personal attachment to what I'm telling you is happening, or that you even have to understand energy. That's the beautiful thing about it. I have clients that are Christians, or they're part of different churches, and when I offer something, they actually go back and they link it to the scripture, or they say, "Oh, in the Bible it says this." So they actually step themselves into their own healing because they align with their truth from what I've just offered. And that's really the beauty of it, is it's just about them healing themselves. And what I perceive, or what I see, because I'm perceiving too, right, through what they're being told, and is, it's like being able to pull out the little nuggets of what truly needs to be exposed is what I listen for. And then I put those together, and that person guides the energy to actually release that specific thing.
That's
Does that
amazing.
kind of answer?
Oh yeah, no, it did. It did. It
Okay.
absolutely did. Like I also like I absolutely agree that, the mind, body, and spirit are all part of the whole. Like when you're dealing with something, you have to deal with all of it. The
Yes.
spiritual, the mental, the emotional, as well as
Yep.
whatever the physical ailment is. Like dis-ease, there's a dis-ease in the body, and if you don't pay attention to it, it eventually becomes a disease.
Exactly. That was
So,
something that, for years I was did massage therapy and personal training, fitness instructor, yoga, and I worked with the body a lot. And of course, I've got a good background on physiology and anatomy and how the body functions. And what I kept seeing was that based on a person's personality, the circumstances in their life, their belief systems, the way they speak about themselves, um, a lot of the time, yes, you can go get a massage. Yes, you can go to the chiropractor. And yes, it can make you feel better. But let's face it, everything that we think creates an emotion, which our physical being feels. Every single thought, because it's all connected. So we can't point at our physical being like we can say to ourselves in our emotional being, oh, I'm feeling grief and loss. And you can process it by releasing it and crying and, trying to go through those steps, right? To heal that. But you can't point at your body and say to your shoulder, okay, left side, I've got, a history with my mom or my right hip with my dad, just because left side's feminine, right side's masculine. We can't point at that area and say, release right now, you don't need to hold that anymore, it's done. We just can't. The body doesn't work like that necessarily. So a lot of those repetitive traumas or experiences that we have that also align with that original agreement or attachment or trauma, they continue to affect that area of our body. And that's what I've noticed through my in-person was that, you can't quite heal it unless you heal the other aspects of the being. And that's why I've created the whole being wellness process that I use.
yeah, I all of it has to be done together. That's that's the philosophy I worked with when I actually was going through my cancer journey. Mind, body, and spirit, all of it, in addition to whatever the oncologist was telling me to do. There was
Exactly.
Reiki, there were detoxifying baths, there was aromatherapy, there was chromotherapy, there was sound healing, there was Starbucks, a
Coffee. Yeah.
little bit of
Yeah.
coffee, and
Yeah.
trying to eat a little better, and you know trying to focus on all of that. And I do think that you know sleeping in an oxygen enriched environment, like with 40 plants in your bedroom, right? And having all of that together with the mindset that I was going to make it through, all of it needed to happen in order
Yes.
for me to be well.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah. And so, like, one of the things that I found, my clients that participate in my 3 month or 6 month programs is yes, we start wherever it is that they're ready to start. Sometimes, it's, oh, I want to, improve the way that I eat and my relationship with my physical body, and I want to lose some weight or I want to get stronger. Sometimes it's about rebuilding their relationships. Maybe the kids have just left the house and they're finding that their relationship with their husband and with themselves in their life is really weird because they don't have anything else to focus on. Like it's changed, right? Something shifted. Sometimes it's because of loss, especially with the last few years. and everything that people have gone through with it, depression and anxiety, and just the changing landscape of what they had before and what they don't necessarily have now, or they feel that they don't. So wherever that person is when we start the program, the idea is to offer them whole being wellness right away, but also the opportunity to have the accountability. Because we all know it's really easy to say, I'm going to start something, and we get pretty gung ho. And then after, we go, oh, geez, I ate that, and oh, well, I ate that. So tomorrow I might as well eat it again. And then I'll also have this, and then I'll also have that. So it's a lot of it is about having the ability to step into like a new lifestyle, a new way of life. So it's a new thought process rather than a diet or, an exercise program. It's about connecting with your body. It's about feeling your body. It's about rebuilding your physical being.
I don't call it exercise because for me, the word exercise is a punishment. Like it feels like a punishment. So now I've reframed it. It is recreation. And I do things that I enjoy doing. And then I enjoy doing them because I pick things that I like doing, like swimming or hiking or riding my tricycle.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, I had a couple clients this week actually, and two of them said, "Oh, well, I ended up having a little bit of a celebration, and so I did have a piece of cake, and but the next night I said to my family, no, I can't have another piece." And I said to both of them, I said, "Okay, so how does it say I can't?" And they're like, "Well, it doesn't feel very good." And I said, "So what if you were to empower yourself?" And this is simple stuff. We all know this, right? What about saying, oh, I don't choose to, I'm not choosing to, or not at this time, or next time I will. Because the truth is there's always another next time. But when we choose the words that we use, and that comes back into that mental being, and one of my favorite sayings is, don't make stuff up and have feelings about it. Because
Yeah.
so often our mind is constantly talking to us. And so I've got tools for supporting people to be able to actually quiet their mind and allow themselves to not have that constant commentary, which is often very negative and not supporting. And that's a big part too. So in the whole being wellness programs, it's all about, yes, uncovering past trauma, connecting with your body, understanding your thought processes, understanding your emotions, clearing what doesn't serve you, showing up for yourself, saying yes, taking responsibility. And sometimes that can all feel and sound a little bit scary. And I've had people say that, wow, that's like, it seems like, oh, that's a little bit scary. I don't want to take responsibility. That sounds like, and I've, the
That
one
sounds
thing
like
that I
work.
can say, it does. And the one thing I can say is it's freedom. It is freedom,
Yeah. And
freedom from,
they don't have to do it immediately. They can do it in baby steps. And I find that sustainable change happens when you do it in small incremental steps where you adopt
absolutely.
a thing, work with it, develop the appropriate habits to make it stick, and then add a new thing as opposed to doing some radical thing and then trying to make that work. It doesn't usually work.
Exactly. I always say that we're going to set them into tangible steps, things that you can do. So chunking it down into bite-sized pieces that you can handle. And I do one of the sessions that I offer is one called procrastination versus practice. So putting things into practice. And so a lot of the time when we procrastinate, we have a lot of mental thoughts around procrastination, which cause an emotional reaction in our physical being. So we have anxiety, we have exhaustion, fatigue, disconnect, all of those things. And before we know it, that thing that we're procrastinating on becomes so big, it actually starts to spill out into everything else. And so putting things into practice means that you take little pieces and you write them down so that you can check them off. And you give yourself those steps so that you can breathe and also take it out of your mind, because then it's not floating around in there like it's just in this abyss. right? Bumping into the sides as a constant reminder, especially like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning when you wake up. Oh, geez, I've got to do that. Oh, and then you procrastinate again. So, all of the programs are based on that. Let's put things into practice. And a lot of the time, what will happen is after a couple months in my programs without any exercise, just from being aware of what you're consuming and a very simple process that I put together for that, that is just based on um, a simple eating sequence that is not really limiting to any specific thing. It's just about moderation. By just doing that and connecting with their body, they lose at least 2 to 3 inches within 2 months.
Yeah. Uh,
Which, when we look at losing weight, often we think, oh, well, I'm going to diet and I'm going to lose a bunch of weight. And we forget, like, adipose tissue, so fat tissue doesn't evaporate off our body, it gets processed by our organs. So when we go through a really intense weight loss program, because that's what we want the result to be, we actually are putting a lot of toxins and trauma into our physical body in order to be able to attain that. So healthy weight loss or healthy body change happens gradually. And I
yes.
have a little tidbit on that, which is, have you ever tried to lose weight and it's like, oh man, I just want to lose it on my stomach? Have you ever tried that? Like, we're like, or have you heard
On a
people say
specific
that?
spot,
Like,
no, I'm looking head to
no,
toe.
but like they'll say, oh, I just want to lose it on my, like they may have, it all over their body, but I want to lose it on my stomach, or they want to lose it in a specific spot. And so there's actually this little secret, and this always shocks everyone, is that you lose the adipose tissue, so the fat tissue, from the last place that you put it on first. So often that'll be like the face or the arms, the last place you put it on. And so wherever you first put weight on, which you normally carry it there, right? Like I carry some on my stomach, that would be the last place I would lose it.
Yeah.
And so quite often we're focusing on where we carry it the most, and yet we have to think, oh, I'm going to lose it from where I always thought that was really fascinating with the body. And so often what people will find is they'll start to lose it on the sides of their body. They'll start to go this way, but then their belly will go out and they'll go, oh, this isn't working, but it is working. That's just part of the process, because every part of this being well and getting to that place of being whole as you want to be is just that it takes that time in that process. So
The way that I have approached it is I don't it's not a diet. It is a lifestyle change. I don't I'm not looking to lose weight. I'm looking to gain muscle and tone and
exactly.
fit better in my clothes.
That's a big one. I always say no scales. Put the scale away. You're not allowed to have a scale when you're in my program. And I have
I
people that like to weigh themselves every day. And I'm like, it's lying to you. You are going to put muscle on and then it's going to lie to you some more. And trust me, it's not your friend.
no, it's not, and I step on it once every couple of months just to get an idea, and I'm
Yeah,
down about 50 pounds over the last year.
that's
And
awesome.
I have some goals that I've set, and I've given myself like goal points and rewards when I reach those goal points.
Yes,
When
that's
I
awesome.
another 70 pounds, and I'm gonna do my back tattoo, and then another 30 after that. I'm gonna get myself a pair of Christian Louboutins. They make them in
Yeah.
like goth Mary Janes. Yes, I'm super excited about that. And when I hit the actual goal, I'm not quite sure what it's going to be, but obviously there's going to be a new wardrobe because I'm going to need that. Uh,
Yeah. And I love how you said that about the reward. Like that, it doesn't matter if you're working on your physical being or your emotional, your mental, your spiritual, it doesn't matter what you're doing. You have to have those little steps where it's like, oh, this is a reward. I did what I said I was going to do. And so those rewards are so important.
I learned that um, Charles Duhigg, is it The Power of Habit, or it's something about habits. And he talked about that in how to break a bad habit and change and develop good habits is the reward and putting the reward in the right spot. He goes into depth about it, and I absolutely agree. I've changed things. So it's smaller plates,
Yes,
smaller
exactly.
portions, more vegetables and stuff. One pass and we're done. There's no seconds, there's none of that. And if I
Yep.
want ice cream or cake, it's 3 or 4 bites because that's enough to get the taste and the craving, and then you don't need to eat anymore. Like it's literally 3 or 4 bites, and then so you if you want to have cake because it's birthday time, have cake.
Yeah.
It just don't have half the cake.
Exactly, yeah. And linking it back to the emotional and mental being, often how we feel when we eat something is a lot more damaging than the food itself. So, little personal backstory. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was bulimic. And I grew up with a family member who was very focused on their body image and their weight. And, oh, look at me, I'm so small. And, I'm super skinny and not like, and not including me in that ever. Right. And so, when you're growing up and you have someone that's comparing themselves and you're a young teenager and you're a little pudgy because that's often what happens as a young girl. It should be, right? We shouldn't be super skinny. And I mean, there's no right or wrong, but, being healthy and, having that space to grow and then, knowing that you're nurtured enough to sustain it. I had some pretty, um, nasty emotional attachments. And I made some pretty hurtful agreements inside of myself. And so I often felt like I was out of control of it because I was. This was who I was. I couldn't change it. And so I actually I started with bulimia when I was about 17 years old. And at first it was just because I would overeat and I thought that if I threw up a little bit that it would just make it so I didn't have to feel guilty and I wouldn't put weight on because obviously the eating was trying to fill the emotional hurt because food makes us feel good, right? Until we turn it around and make it feel bad. But the interesting thing with bulimia and anyone that's watching this that struggled with it or anorexia is it's a disease that it takes you over and you feel empowered by it. For me, it was a feeling of like I was in control and I was empowered. And because I only would throw up one meal a day I would eat, I lost weight very slowly. So over 5 years, I went from 185 pounds down to 113, and I'm 5'8". So I was very skinny. And I remember that person in my family who was always comparing themselves saying to me when I hit about 120 pounds that I was too skinny, that now I was too skinny. And that was like I had won. And so the mental chatter that would happen when I would eat something was so traumatic. It would literally make me feel sick. My physical being would start, like I had to throw up. There was no stopping it. It was like it needed to happen. And the disease part of it in the brain, in the mental being, is when I was done, I would say, "You did a good job." That's how I thought in my head.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't until I became a personal trainer and I opened up my own fitness studio and I started taking my personal training and fitness instructor certifications. This would have been back in about 2009, sorry, 2000, yeah, 2009. Um, it wasn't until then that I started using my body in a different way by exercising or recreation that I actually started to enjoy my body because I could feel what it was doing for me. And that was the changing point because when I was enjoying it and feeling what it could give me, I didn't want to hurt it anymore. And so I went up from that 113 to 120. And then actually my healthiest weight is 155 because I'm strong and I've got a lot of muscle. So, but what I see in myself that I've been able to heal was that commentary around what I eat. Because when you put food in your body and then you talk badly to yourself about it, you shouldn't have eaten that. You know you're going to get fat from it. You know you shouldn't have eaten that. You know it's not good for you. They're watching. Whatever your commentary is, that was mine. You've just created a negativity and energy in your body that you can feel. There's no way you can't feel it.
Yep.
And that makes the food even worse.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that journey led me to in my coaching, because I took my coaching years earlier from my personal training, to put together what I call the food and feeling log. And so it's all about finding foods that you feel good when you eat and how you feel after the foods that maybe don't support your body, because we're all different. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you for sharing that story. I
yeah,
More people need to talk about food disorders. It's all over the place.
it is.
Especially as a young person and a female presenting one. The the stress of society between the magazines and the diet culture, uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Nonsense, I guess is the right, like, just the whole essence of how society looks and expects young women to look instead of just letting them be, you know,
Yeah.
here's the makeup, here's the clothes you're supposed to be able to fit into, here's the foods you're supposed to be eating. It's
Yeah.
it affects
Definitely.
more people than people realize. There are lots of
Yes.
people out there with food disorders that don't share because it's hard to talk about.
Yes. And I think a lot of the time it happens. We see what our parents go through, and we obviously we witness, what food is like in our home, and whether you sit down and have a meal with your family or it's always on the go because you're running, or part of it is, learned at a very young age as well. And then on top of it, we're with, like you mentioned, right? Like what it's supposed to look like. And so yeah, a lot of that too, as we move through the different times in our lives, can come and can go. And that's one of the areas of trauma that I really help and offer support for my clients in, is just getting them connected with what works for them and what doesn't work, because it's not about doing a diet. That's not life, right? It's about really integrating and connecting with what your body thrives on. And when we thrive, we have energy. We're not tired. We don't feel bogged down. We're not puffy. We don't have as much inflammation. I mean, obviously, things change as we get older, right? But
Yes.
um, yeah, so that's a big part of it as well. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I appreciate specifically the part where you started to develop a relationship with your body and start to trust your body and be grateful for your body. And that's hard for me at this point because one of the side effects of having radiation on your abdomen is
Yes.
what I call poopsidence.
Mhm.
And sometimes I have a 3-second warning on the fact that I need to be in the bathroom. And if I'm in the grocery store, I do not have 3 seconds to get to the bathroom. And I have definitely pooped my pants in public. And I'm really working very hard on being grateful for the body that I have, because I am grateful for the body that I have. But having the societal, like, people don't want to talk about it because, they hope it will never happen to them, but it's already too late. Like as a
Hmm.
baby, you pooped your pants all the time, right? Somebody cleaned it up for you. And as you age, it's a thing that may happen to you again.
Yeah.
And women who have children or whatever, you cough, you sneeze, and you pee a little. Like it's part of the human experience. And working to like integrate that knowledge into myself. You cannot control the situation, you can only control how you handle it.
Yeah.
So I'm shifting how I handle that. I feel it's super important to practice what you preach, right? Like if I'm telling
Yeah.
people that they should be shifting their mindsets, then I need to be actively working on that as well, and I need to be willing to talk about pooping in public,
Yes.
because it's important, because people get embarrassed when it happens, and I do too. I absolutely do too. But shit happens. Literally, shit happens,
Yes.
and having the grace to just accept that I would rather to have the poopsidence than to have to died of the cancer that I was diagnosed with. So I can celebrate that. And the difficult days when they happen, they're difficult. They're absolutely difficult. But fortunately, I work from home. So most of the time, the poop incidents happen at home, and then I can immediately shower.
Yeah. That's like you said, talking about it and starting the commentary is so important. And coming back to that, like you said, having grace, but give yourself some space too, because you can have grace, but give yourself some space. Like what I mean by that is like let yourself just be for a minute.
Yeah.
And then I I have I find that a lot of the time too, and I don't know if this happened with you, but when um when you go through these treatments to save your life, literally, there wasn't maybe necessary a lot of information about what actually was going to happen to your body. And I have a family member as well that has had a bilateral and had radiation on one side, and it's all just getting sucked right up, like the armpits just caving in, and the nerve pain and the phantom nerve pain, the stuff that was never talked about, and this was years ago, the first one. And so the things that they did, the reconstruction, the way they did it, that there it's a lifetime of trauma. And that was all not ever talked about. It was just, we need to save your life and you need to do this. And
It-
what quality of life you have after, we can't guarantee, we don't know, but you're going to be alive. And the
yes,
trauma from that alone is,
absolutely. Absolutely. Like you never know. You don't know. Like I haven't done this yet, right? Like, but I'm gonna do it, right?
yeah,
You know, my body isn't whole. It's not broken. I don't consider it broken. It's my body, it's my temple. It doesn't work the way I would love it to work, but it functions. And I really appreciate it. I'm so very grateful for it. And you're 1,000% right. There is no discussion other than we're treating the cancer, and that's all the focus is just treating the cancer. They don't talk about possible sexual dysfunction that you'll have, uh, shitting your pants, all the different kinds of cancer. Everybody, there are so many different things that they just don't tell you about.
yeah,
Losing your memory, losing people, like literally not knowing who people are. They're just sucked out of your head. And
Yeah.
when you encounter them again, you have no idea who they are.
Mm.
They don't talk about any of that.
No.
And I don't blame them to a point because it's already so very overwhelming to just stay on task to survive.
Yeah.
And when when your chemo treatments are so toxic that they have to give you rescue drugs before, during, and after your chemo, they're not going to focus on what might fucking happen later. They're not. It's like
Well, and that's, I don't
because
think
it's
also that's not what they're trained to necessarily to do, right? They're trained to destroy the cancer cells, right? And to give
yes.
you a chance to live. And, that is a very wonderful thing to be able to continue to live. And I think that that's what you and what I really acknowledge in the work that you're doing with your clients and with being here and being so vulnerable and honest is you're showing up saying that it no matter what your being is, you can make the choice to
Yes.
connect with it, to be with it, to accept it, to honor it.
And you also have the right to make the choice to not.
Yeah, you
Like,
do. Yeah,
one of the hardest things to accept is when somebody has made the choice that they're not going to fight anymore, no matter how much you love them or how much you want them to stay on this planet. You have no idea how difficult this kind of journey is. I mean, any kind of journey, honestly.
yeah,
So, my best friend from high school walked with me through my entire journey. And several years after I was cancer free, she got diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and she decided that she was not going to fight it. And I miss her.
mm,
And I miss
yeah,
her. But I can't judge her on her decision. I have absolutely no right to do that because I know that there were a couple of points in my journey where I seriously thought about that decision.
yeah,
And it's difficult because you don't want that kind of decision to impact your family, but ultimately it is your decision. Yeah,
exactly. And it's interesting. I for some can I share a story?
of course.
So I actually about 20 years ago, my dad told me this story, and I was having a really hard time processing something that I was experiencing, and I couldn't understand what or why it was happening. And it involved another person. So, not so much on the physical, but more on the emotional journey, right? And my dad said to me, and it was the story of the little soul. Have you heard that one before?
Have not.
No. So I might have changed it because I've been saying it for 20 years, but this is the story that my dad told me. And it's the story of the little soul. And so the little soul goes to the great creator, which could be God, could be whatever you believe it is, and says, great creator, I would like to experience something other than love. And the great creator says to the little soul, well, it's kind of impossible because you are that of only love. And the little soul said, but yeah, but what? I hear about all these other emotions like sadness and anger and frustration and all these emotions that I've never experienced. And I want to experience them. And so the great creator says, well, you can, but in order to do that, you're going to have to go to another realm. And you're going to have to ask another little soul to go with you. And something's going to have to happen to you so horrible that you have no choice but to experience all those things: sadness, pain, disconnect, everything. And eventually come back to love. And so the little soul thought about it and went on its way and came across little soul number two and said to little soul number two, I want to go to another realm. And I want to go and have something done to me that's so horrible that I would have no choice but to experience all these other emotions and come back to love and forgiveness. And so little soul number two thought about it and then looked at little soul number one and said, well, how do you do that? Well, in order to do that, I would need another little soul to come with me and do those horrible things. Oh, and so little soul number two looked at little soul number one and said, well, I, I guess I could come with you. I would do that for you. And little soul number one looked at little soul number two and said, you would? You would do that? And little soul number two said, of course I would, because I love you. It doesn't make the horrific things that we go through okay, especially when we look at the trauma the body goes through, like with what you went through, or we look at rape or child abuse or all the horrible things that we do to each other.
Yeah.
But for me, it made me step back at that time in my life and first off know that I have no idea what each individual's purpose is in this life, what it truly is that they want to heal from, receive, whatever their highest subconscious goal is for their soul. I don't know that. I don't know that necessarily for myself. But I know that for the last 20 years, every time I've faced something that's been challenging, I have stopped and asked myself, do I want to carry this the rest of my life? Do I want it to cause me pain? Do I want to disconnect? Do I want to make it into something that I have to hurt from? Or is there another option? And it doesn't mean that you forget. It doesn't mean that you forget the pain or what someone's done to you. It doesn't even mean that you necessarily forgive them completely, but you forgive yourself and you love yourself. And knowing that in that process for me, and when I've shared it with my clients, it sometimes allows that offering of space and grace again to come in, because we're not focused on just the hurt, what we don't have anymore, what's changed.
Yeah. I like the space and grace.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been practicing grace for a while now. And I really have seen transformation in myself. And
Yeah.
I think it's super important to talk about all of these things so that I can be the resource I needed when I was going through my journey. And it didn't exist, right? So,
Yes.
I mean, there's Gilda's Club, but it wasn't a positive space for me. Everybody that I encountered, they were all mourning their diagnoses and nobody wanted to be proactive about anything. And I was like, I cannot be around this. It will affect my healing. And
Yes.
so I did not. And then I walked walked in the wood barefoot and danced in the rain and you know did
Yeah.
moon worshiping and detoxifying baths and
Exactly. And all of that, you're choosing to come back to love. You're choosing to
yes,
come back to that's coming back to life. And that
yeah,
is what, your work and my work and so many practitioners right now that are showing up and that are saying, hey, I haven't arrived where I am because I didn't go through it.
yeah,
And
yeah,
same with you. You are where you are because you went through it. And that alone, when you look at your body, or when I look at who I am, or when I look at anything, that's the part you look at. That's the part you truly see, is that this allowed me to be here so that I can truly show up.
yes, yes. I have not only made peace with it, but I am grateful that I was diagnosed and that I had that journey because now I can help billions of people.
Exactly. And you are helping. Yeah,
Yes,
by showing
yes.
up
I
and
I definitely I know that. I know that. And even if I can help one individual not go through one of the things that I went through because I talked about it, so they were able to be a little proactive on it. You know, taking the stool softener before you go in for a surgery, not a bad idea. Not
Yeah,
a bad idea.
yeah,
Because they don't give them to you until after they give you the opiates, and now you have whew, hard as diamonds that you're trying to,
yeah,
expel after you've had an abdominal surgery, and they don't want you to push. Well, how else is that? What I'm missing a step here, guys.
yeah, yeah. It doesn't
like,
work like that, actually.
like
Yeah,
I have 100 staples in my belly, and I'm not allowed to push. Well, then are you going in there and fetching them? Like, what are we doing here?
yeah,
And if if I could save somebody that experience,
yeah.
like,
Yes.
'cause it's
Yeah,
not a thing that
exactly.
they don't think to tell you that that might be a thing, right? They're like, no food and water, but all right, so take the stool softener at midnight with your last cup of water and then be done with it, right? Like, so many little things. I didn't know that there are volunteer organizations that will drive you to your appointments until 10 years after I needed it. There I should not have been driving myself to my radiation appointments.
No.
Worse than a drunk driver. Like, honestly, because of just how exhausted I was.
Yeah.
But there was nobody to do it. My
Yeah.
sister, she was taking care of me. She was working 16-hour days because disability didn't didn't send me a check for 4 months.
Mhm.
I'm fighting for my life and I have to like deal with that horse.
Yeah.
There's so many things broken with the system. There really are. Absolutely a nightmare.
Yeah, and
But
just, yeah, adding that on to the experience, right? To that already hard, challenging, stressful time that is,
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like it shouldn't be a thing, but it is.
Mhm.
All right, my love. I know you have a free gift for our audience today.
I do. So, I'm offering a whole being wellness support sheet. It's a fun little tool that you can print and put on your fridge. And it's got some tips and tricks to work with your emotional, your physical, mental, and spiritual being, as well as some self care that sometimes we just forget to do. And it can be easy. So they're simple self care uh, points that you can just go, oh yeah, I haven't done that for a while, right? And one little tidbit that I'll leave off. So yeah, feel free to print that. And it's also got my website on there, which is cvwellnessbc.com. And the last thing that I'd love to just say is whatever you're doing, whatever you're starting, whatever you're going through, less is more.
Yeah,
So often we start off with more and that we get less results because more is too much. We can't fit it into our time schedule. We can't, we're not able to follow the diet. We're not able to do that exercise program. You know, it's too much to deal with all at once. That emotional trauma that we've been carrying for 60 years or 20 years or whatever. So that is my one of my favorite things, and it's the same when I start a rehabilitative personal training program or anything. I say less is more. The less you ask at the beginning, the more you will have at the end.
baby steps.
So
Absolutely
baby
perfect.
steps, tangible steps forward, and a whole lot of space and grace. And sometimes you have to choose to take space from something to get clarity. Sometimes you have to also give yourself some grace. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for having me today and sharing those vulnerable parts of your journey and everything that you're doing with this powerful pantaloons.
Thank you, Cambria. I really appreciate you joining us today, and I appreciate you giving our audience a free gift. That's it for today, everybody. Bye.
Bye.